Kathy Brennan here, helping you to look better, feel better, and do better. Well, this week's habit is make a habit of finding meaning. Well, what does that even mean? Well, what is meaningful to you? That's where you start. You have to ask yourself that question. What is meaningful to me? Because I might find something meaningful that you don't. That's fine, completely fine. We each get to find meaning in the areas that touch us. So it starts with the question, what do I value? Now, each person will value something different. I value different things than my spouse. I value different things than my kids and my friends and my neighbors. But we all get to. When I talk about boundaries, values are something that we each have. Those are ours. We're responsible for them. We need to care for what we value, protect what we value, and take responsibility for what we value. But that is the place you will start to find what will bring you meaning. So figure out what you value. One of mine is creativity. I love the written word. Of course, I like to write. I just get delighted in how people put words together to make me laugh out loud or really sense an emotion. I love art. I love theater. That's why I went to Hamilton last week. Oh my gosh, that was so delightful. But creativity is something I value. That doesn't mean you have to value that. You could value technology or knitting or nature. Like, we all value different things, but find out for you what that is. And often we don't stop and figure out what that is. We follow what our spouse values or what our friends value. We have never stopped to think about, what do I value? Because that is where you will start to find meaning. You can also find meaning in your life if something is bugging you. Because if something is bugging you, it's touching something very deep, and it's probably touching something that you haven't protected, or you haven't worked through, or you haven't yet taken responsibility for. So when you find something that's bothering you, I always say, ask yourself questions. Well, why is that bothering me? And your first or second answer is not the root of it. You need to be curious. Like, 4-year-olds ask so many questions. You need to keep asking yourself questions. Well, why is that bothering me? Well, why is that true? Well, why is that true? And then you can uncover what it is in there that's the root of the thing that's bothering you. And then you will discover meaning. You will discover what's meaningful to you. So pay attention to what bothers you. Also, take another way to find meaning is take a look at your life, the last 10 years or 5 years or 1 year, and look at what stands out to you. That's where the meaning is. And when you start to become aware, that trip really opened my eyes to history, or that conversation really was so fulfilling because of the content of what we talked about. So just look back, not to stay there, but to find what was meaningful to you. And another way that you will find meaning is think about those things that you just can't get out of your head. I look back on my life, I've got a lot of memories, but there are a few that really stand out. And that's because they were meaningful to me. And we need to figure out what that is. And when you, again, become aware, that one, I have something that happened in about 1984 that I really remember. And it wasn't traumatic, it wasn't terrible. But it really stuck out to me as something that, because it was meaningful to me, I'm sure all the other people in the room forgot it, but that was so meaningful to me. So think about those things that stick in your mind try to discover what that is showing you about what is meaningful to you. So I always like to ask myself the question, well, why is this a good habit? Why is it a good habit to find meaning? Because we need to go find it. Often we overlook it or don't spend the time to find it. Because when you find meaning in your life is more meaningful. And that might sound silly, but meaningful is full and important and inspiring and beautiful and all the things that we want our lives to be. So when you get in the habit of finding the meaning of certain things, it will kind of make your life bloom and expand. Also, on a completely unrelated note, it's a good habit because when we find meaning, like in something traumatic or something like a failure, when we look at the failure, something was there that was very meaningful to us. Maybe it was, I have put in so much effort and then I failed. And like we come up against ourselves like, I didn't put in enough effort, or I don't have the skills, or I needed to do it a slightly different way. So that failure even can show you what was meaningful to you. And it can also take away some of the regret or sorrow that you have around those failures because you find the meaning and you say, that was a turning point. That was something I didn't do quite right. And now I see it in a different way. And I don't need to regret or beat myself up about the failure, but I can feel good about the meaning that it showed me and the direction where it sent me in my life. That's why it's a good habit. So how can you start to do this? How can you start to find meaning in your life? Well, I mentioned this earlier to kind of look back and do a little, like, where have I been? A habit, I've done this 3 times, is to, in December, you could do it now, look at your calendar for the last year. I keep most everything on my calendar. I don't know how it will be for you. Maybe you just need to recall the last 12 months. And make a list of, these are the things that were maybe successes or failures, kind of big, medium, and small. Just start making a list, an actual list, write it out. And look at that. And what you recall or what jumps out at you is the place that was meaningful to you. And that will also show you where you want to go in the future. Because that was an event. That was something that I really remember being impactful. But often life gets busy and then we just kind of forget it. So going back over the last 12 months, writing out some of the big, medium, and small successes and failures, that will help you figure out what is meaningful to you. And it will help develop this habit of finding meaning so that you don't have to wait a year to come back to it and realize, oh, this is something I want to spend time on. This is going to make my life better. Another separate way to form this habit is spend time with friends with similar values. I just talked about what we value as the place that we start to mine that meaning. And an example is a club or a faith community where you're all interested in the same thing. You all value the same thing, and you can talk about that thing with common language because you both appreciate that thing. And so that's a place to kind of even develop your own meaning because you hear other people's perspectives around that same value. So hang around with people with the same values, passions, interests that you do. Another thing I referred to is this self-reflection. Asking yourself those questions, getting deep with yourself. It can just be in your mind, but also give it time. The meaning to certain events in my life has sometimes literally taken decades to get at it because I'm just not ready to see it or hear it yet. So be self-reflective. And then back to where I started, finding meaning is figuring out what you value, because that is the place where you will start to see the meaning in your life. So really, this is again a time, it will take some time. It'll take, you can't do it all at once, but really define what you value. And those change over time. So do not look at what you valued when you're 18. We might all laugh at that. Of course, I don't value the same things. But even each decade, we might change what we value based on our life circumstance. So make a habit of finding meaning. It's a good habit that will lead to a good life. And it's easier to form good habits than live with bad ones. Be well, my friends.